As the quest for knowledge continues to progress forward, we find ourselves still asking questions about human behavior, social technology, and the future of mankind. In a world devoid of such discussion, 2 Crowder College instructors have been chosen to podcast their views on current events, weird science, and pop culture. And now, broadcasting from Crowder College, this is Psych Out with Nathan and Jason.
Welcome to the world of tomorrow!
Welcome to Psych Out, episode 39. I am Nathan Gandy, psychology instructor here at Crowder College, along with my co-host,
Jason Edgar, speech instructor here at Crowder College, and we're here on Veterans Day.
Veterans Day.
And honestly, Nathan, I wouldn't have even known it was Veterans Day if it wasn't for my Facebook wall.
I think we've had enough discussions on the podcast alone how Facebook pretty much educates us about all of that. I knew it was coming because I get the question pretty often of, do you have fill-in-the-blank federal holiday off?
Oh, okay.
You know, usually someone will say, hey, is this off?
Well, apparently not. We're here doing
No, not at all. Though we probably would have come on a holiday anyway because that's how we roll.
You know, I would have rather worked anyways because on those days off, I can't go to the bank anyways. I'm not going to get any mail. And chances are there's going to be terrible TV on TV. So, but anyways, Veterans Day. We're here full force.
We are. And it kind of seems like, too, as a side note, that it should be a celebration of veterans, which I am not.
Okay.
You know, I don't feel like I need off. You know what I mean?
Oh, sure. Yeah.
I mean, respect to veterans out there, obviously, but I have not done anything to earn that mantle. So
yes.
I don't have a problem working on
Thank the actual veterans.
Yeah.
All right. So, anyways, what are we going to talk about today, Nathan, for current events?
Well, you know, we're going to have a lot of fun stuff to talk about today, but we have to start with a couple of tragic bits, and certainly the huge international news is the typhoon in the Philippines. Mm-hmm. And I was talking with you about this earlier, and I wanted Jason to grab us some numbers, which he'll share with us in a second. But just to try to help us understand the sheer sort of magnitude of this event. So, Jason, give us the numbers currently as far as confirmed and estimate dead in this event.
Well, it says here that you just asked for confirmed, but I have unconfirmed wire service reports of about 10,000 dead.
Yes.
And the reason for this is because the Philippines, in and of itself, are a bunch of scattered around islands, right?
Yes.
And then those same islands, there's just really like a bunch of villages and stuff. I read an article somewhere where there's a family of 30 that only one person has been available for that family. So, there's certain pockets of Philippines that were hit tragically.
Yeah,
and
very dense pockets.
Absolutely.
It's hard to do. Yeah, I read one. I read the 10,000 is the estimate. Currently, they've confirmed around 1,600. But as Jason mentioned, since it's a spread out community in islands, and then you have densely packed families and urban areas on the small islands, it's really hard to get a specific count, so those to be looking. But I asked Jason for, maybe sound unusual to listeners, but I wanted you to find out for the September 11th attacks, because here in the U.S. that's kind of still visceral. We still kind of have that in our mind of this terrible tragedy. What was the final death count? Average? What was our average?
It was, people usually just attribute it to 2,000, and it was 2,996.
Yeah.
And that's like direct attacks. I read one story where after the attack, some guy jumped off the building to get away from the fire, and he hit a fireman, and that fireman died. So that's not necessarily a 9/11 attack, but the attack with the 4 airplanes, about 3,000 people.
About 3,000. So, I mean, huge tragedy, but I want to give us a comparison number, because that sticks in our head of this huge event. And here is a natural disaster that is, possibly at 10,000 people.
Yeah.
And in recent years, we've had hurricanes, we've had storms. Look at Japan, look at other coastal islands where so many people lose their lives. But, I once heard a I think this was a congressional speaker made kind of a little tongue-in-cheek joke of, we talk a lot about, after September 11th, or we're in a post 9/11 world. And he was like, look at these natural disasters. Like, we don't say we're a post-hurricane, Philippines world, but this is huge events. But it's just hard for us to wrap our head around that.
Well, New York could be post 9/11, much like New Orleans could be post Katrina.
Right.
We were talking the other day how the Saints have been post Katrina really good. But
yeah, it's the language that we use.
Other things for the Philippine government, estimates suggest that 9.5 million people were affected by it.
Sure.
So, again, there probably wasn't a huge death toll with Hurricane Katrina, but that's because there was fair warning and people could evacuate. But this thing was in such big magnitude that there really wasn't no place to evacuate. And what I heard on, let's say, Saturday, Nathan, you probably heard the same thing, was that this was going to be the biggest storm in recorded history, too, right?
Yes, and I think currently is still holding that mantle by climate scientists. And, of course, there's a lot of debate going on about how much of this storm is in relation to sort of the man-made climate change. And because if it does have a strong correlation, we have to then ask ourselves, is this the strongest storm until the next one? And so trying to plan accordingly for that.
So, Nathan, are we going to get a lot of aid to the Philippines? Like, I haven't heard a big drumbeat building just yet. So.
I haven't yet. Oh, I know. I read this morning that I know the Marines that were stationed close to the area have been providing relief. I don't know how much of American capital and manpower is going, but usually that's something that's addressed after we get more specifics, like here's the number, here's what we need. And right now, I think, unfortunately, as we alluded to at the beginning, the Philippines can't even address what they need because we're still finding the damage that's done and the people that are missing.
And Joplin had this too during the Joplin tornado. Like, some of the parts that need the most aid are, covered in trees and things like that. Right. And so the first wave of help is just making sure that we've gotten all the people that are, underneath rubble and stuff.
Right, and I think that's what they're doing now, certainly. Well, so, terrible news, but we're thinking of you, Philippines. So.
Yeah, so we also, Nathan, that's like the big global story. Here in the United States, we actually have a sports story that is taking hold of the population, and that is this Richie Incognito versus Jonathan Martin of the Miami Dolphins.
Yes.
And you told me you hadn't heard much of this story, right?
I followed why he left, and again, the idea. I knew he played for the Dolphins, and I knew the debate is. I wasn't sure. Is he pursuing legal action?
I don't think so.
Or he's just kind of reporting, here's why I retired.
Jonathan Martin, the guy that was being bullied, he hasn't said anything. And actually, that's what happened whenever he left the Miami Dolphins facilities, is that he just left out of nowhere. And whenever you do something like that, especially a high-profile job like, let's say, offensive tackle for a national football team, people are going to want to know why. And then it comes out, well, he was being harassed by this guy named... best name ever, right, Nathan? Richie Incognito.
He is not incognito.
At this point. And if you've seen videos of this guy, he just looks like a caveman. Like, they had this video of him in a pool hall with his shirt off, just walking around like, who wants a piece, right? And so I was listening to a sports analyst that says just follow the text. Like, that's going to be the brunt of the story.
Right.
And it come to find out that Incognito has problems at the University of Nebraska, had problems with the St. Louis Rams, and now, problems with the Miami Dolphins. Last year, Nathan, the Miami Dolphins kind of had a vacuum in leadership, and Incognito took that hold. So not only is he a big bully, but he's also the leader. So there really wasn't anybody that Jonathan Martin could talk to about this because, well, I mean,
now you mentioned following text. So for those who aren't familiar with the story, define bullying.
Okay. Well, I mean, I can't really say half the things that were in the text.
Okay, so texting is part of that. So just constantly saying things.
Well, here's another thing, Nathan. Here's another layer. It looks to be like the Miami Dolphins coaches were actually telling Incognito to kind of get more out of this guy.
Right.
And that's just like telling a bully to say, hey, go bully some more.
Using bullying as a motivational
Yes,
tactic.
absolutely. Okay. And you said you didn't want to know what the texts were, or what was your question?
No, I was just saying, you don't have to repeat it, I was saying. But I was trying to find the different ways when he says bullying. So he was getting texts. Was there physical bullying?
And death threats, too.
Death threats.
Yeah,
okay.
and that's the thing. Like, it's one thing to maybe try to get the most out of somebody, like, hey, you need to pull your weight.
Yeah.
You make sure the quarterback isn't getting tackled. But whenever you're saying, I'm going to kill you, that's a whole different thing altogether. And so here's the thing that I've noticed, Nathan, is that, just because you're a 340-pound, 6'5" monster does that mean you could be sensitive like this Jonathan Martin? Because he's kind of like an introvert, kind of a self-reflective kind of guy. Like,
well,
what
hasn't that been like maybe not a criticism of sports, but maybe it is a criticism that those who would hear the story, who would defend Incognito, might say, well, you're supposed to be tough.
Yeah.
Like that's part of the game.
Sure.
We saw this with the whole contract tackling a couple of years ago.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Like, well, that's just part of the game.
Sure,
just
yes.
live with it.
Absolutely.
I know it's a different topic, but that general refrain you need to be tough, so suck it up.
You're not necessarily wrong, because a lot of players have come out, and it's strange that a lot of players are on Incognito side where they're saying this is the culture of football, and it's a very unique culture of football. But Nathan, I mean, if that's the culture of football, I don't care how big of a behemoth I am. I don't want to be a part of it. I don't want to be a part of anybody that's telling them, people are telling me that they're going to do terrible things to my mom,
right.
Making fun of my race or, sexual preference. And ultimately, I don't want to be a part of an organization that a leader of that organization is saying that they're going to kill me, right? So if someone comes up and says, well, that's just the culture of football, my answer as a debate coach is, well, the culture of football needs to change, right? Because, there's better ways to get the most out of people versus just saying you're going to kill them.
Well, isn't that, that's the universal social refrain is, if there is this culture, it doesn't mean because it's always been this way.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Doesn't mean it doesn't need to change.
Yeah, paradigm shift.
And that's kind of the answer that I'm hearing. It sounds like you're saying the same thing, which is like, we've always done it like this. Well, okay, but it sounds like that's crossing a line and getting a bit weird there.
And so, real quickly to wrap up this discussion, so Incognito saying bullying, and supporters of this are saying, like, well, this is the culture of football. This is on the heels of new concussion news.
Yeah.
And let's not forget that Redskins discussion. So, are we even going to see the NFL in like 5 years? Oh, and Aaron Hernandez, like the big premeditated killer gangster guy. I haven't talked about him.
Things might be changing. I mean, but we do see this, and fans of the show, listeners know. I mean, I don't follow NFL near as much as many of you out there, but you do notice about every 10 years there's a pretty big shift. Something happens, something gives, whether it's terms of rules, whether it's terms of player conduct, and so we've had about a couple times a year in the past 4 years.
Well, and
some pretty big events.
You brought it up too. Like, you can't put contracts out to take out Brett Favre's knee, and that was what the Saints were doing, and they had some huge sanctions on their team. But Nathan, I think we need to move on to some pleasant news.
Yes, we've had pretty terrible
typhoon news and then bullying.
Yeah.
Well, I just wanted to bring up this really funny thing that Andrea Mars put on our Psych Out wall.
Yes,
actually, she may have emailed us.
She emailed it to us, but still.
But this is like a word generating website where it says, what is it called whenever?
Yes.
And I'll just use an example. When you scratch an itch, but more and more itches seem to start popping up all over the place. And so what you can do is that it's also user-generated, where you'll type in, well, I think it should be this word, and then it gets the most votes.
Yeah.
So an itch that actually spreads, one person called it an itch ripple, and that got 268 votes. Itchplosion, which is 99. And itchsurgency. And I was looking at this, and I mean, every one of them was just not only hysterical, but it was actually like, yeah, that is a perfect word for that.
Yeah.
So it's like these really small situations that are only occurring, let's say in 2013, where it's like, I don't know, you don't get a text from somebody after 20 minutes. Is that
right? What are the
text denial or something like that, right? So, did you get a chance to look at that website?
I did look at some of them. I should have wrote some down, but it was a funny website. Tell listeners the website itself again.
Oh, it's called Words for That, and I want to say that I posted it on our Facebook
I did believe so.
Yeah, there we go.
No, that was good. I like that.
Yes, and then before we move on to Weird Science, Nathan, I think going back to sad news, we have to kind of inform our audiences that for the second time we have been merit blocked, if you will.
Our first, we were not able to do an interview with Russ Hopper today. Now, the first time was our mistake. We had an equipment problem and a scheduling problem. But now this time he has an event that suddenly came up.
Right at Tuesday at 2, which was going to be your interview.
Yeah.
So in lieu of that, and we only had about a day to recover from that news, we decided that we had...
I would say morning, because I read it this morning. You knew about it earlier. I read it this morning.
Well, thankfully, we had a bunch of Marvel discussions in our chamber that we decided that our feature is just going to be all things Marvel.
Yeah.
And that's going to be Marvel Comics. I'm going to talk about... I watched Thor this weekend. Yeah. And then you wanted to talk about the Marvel plus Netflix, so we're going to talk more about Netflix.
Yeah, we do. But I got a lot of things to to say about this thing, not just the Netflix
And then
side.
I wanted to bring up, and I'll bring it up in the feature, how they're bringing back Miss Marvel, which is a Muslim superhero.
That was a big event too.
So,
So
boom, we got a new feature. And side notes, next week we'll have Keith Zaromsky, and then the week after that we'll have Russ Harper.
And I've already, been poking at Keith to be like, you do know what day it is, and we are going to do this because we keep losing our interview. So he is on board for our Thanksgiving special. So let's take a break there, unless you have anything else you want to bring to the table.
Nope, Jason, done talking.
Jason out. Jason out. All right. Well, thanks so much for listening thus far. We'll take a breather. When we come back, we'll do some weird science. See you then.
From my heart and from my hand, why don't people understand my intentions? Weird science. Weird science.
Welcome back to Psych Out. We're here to talk about some weird science. Jason and I both brought to the table some interesting bits, but as a special bonus, quite a bit of our weird science is coming from listeners like you. So we always love it when you post Facebook or email us some interesting weird science bits and pieces. So we're going to do kind of a rapid fire. I'll bring up the weird science, and then I'm going to have Jason comment, then he's going to do the same. So we have not experienced each other's weird science this week, so let's see what happens. That sounds very lewd. Kind of romantic.
I love Nathan's weird science. The chemicals between us, right?
Calvin Klein presents Weird Science. Okay. Well, my first weird science is about gambling. So, for my friend out there who works at a casino, sorry, sir, I'm about to give away some of your secrets.
Womp womp.
But there's an old saying that you're just not going to win the lottery. Or if you're a gambler, it just is not in your favor. And that probably won't surprise people. Obviously, this business would not work if the house, so to speak, did not win. It didn't have it slanted in their favor. But what's surprising is we still tend to overestimate our ability to predict how well we will win. Or when you hear about people who, like, let's say they go to a casino and they win like a $10,000 prize. And we look at that person and we say, in that moment, there's a winner. That could be us. But what we don't think about is the years of gambling that person does.
Sure, yeah.
And so what this study, I'm going to talk about a study that was actually summarized by the Wall Street Journal. They actually themselves linked to the study, but I'm pulling from their website, where they followed a 2-year study of the same set of gamblers. Okay, so they're not asking the question, how many people win in a day or how many people win in a year. They're asking the question, if you are a consistent gambler, what are your chances that at the end of this period you have made money? Because that ultimately is the win. Because if you win $10,000 but then you go back and you spend it, then you didn't really win $10,000. All right, so here's what they found. They said, on any given day, the chances of emerging a winner weren't too bad. Gamblers won money on 30% of the days they wagered. But continuing to gamble is and here's the pun, bad bet. Just 11% of players ended up in the black over a full 2-year period, and most of those pocketed, this is in the black, less than $150. So 2-year investment in gaming, they came away with less than $150 total. Jason, what do you think about that? Now, to be specific, this was blackjack, roulette,
table games.
Table games, yeah.
Yeah, I don't think it matters whether it's a table game or not. Like, especially in bingo, you have like a big old bingo hall, and one person wins it. I was going to say also that Ryan Reese is the current World Series of Poker champion, and in one game of poker, it took about 2 weeks to play, but he won $8 million. You know how many losers there were? 6,351. So I think that this cross applies to what you're saying. Like, the reason that these hotels are not like tin shacks, the reason that they are beautiful, beautiful buildings is because it's in their favor. And even though you might win the first time, doesn't mean you're going to win that second or third time. And what people usually do is no one ever comes home and says, well, I lost at the casino again. They either won or they're not talking about it,
Yes.
right? And I want to say my friend Corey's a lot like this, because if you ask him, he is net money whenever it comes to gambling at the Cherokee Casino in Silent Springs, Oklahoma. But you have research here that tells me that my friend Corey's just wrong. Right?
Either he's in the minority, it's a very rare circumstance, or there is something called sometimes called the confirmation bias, sometimes called the fallacy of positive instances, which is we only remember the hits and we forget the misses. So you remember the times you win, and it feels like you're always a winner, and you just sort of every pull of, let's say, the slot machine or the turn of the table where you fail, you sort of discard that because you have that one story of, but I won that time. And we see this with lottery players. There is always someone's going to win the lottery. But that's out of, millions, if not billions of players.
And the higher it gets, the more people will play. Right,
will play. And so if you look at your chances, I'm sorry to say your chances are incredibly low. Or to phrase it another way, you'll be eaten by a shark or a bear 10 times over before you'll win the lottery. It's unfortunate, but that's where the numbers lie. There'll be that one winner, but as you said, look at all the losers, unfortunately. So,
poker players are always saying whenever like the hand is going on and they know, like, they're all in, right? And the cards are showing and there's 2 more cards left. They're always saying, just one time. Just one time. What they should be saying is one more time, because you probably got it 2 weeks ago, and now you're asking for it again. So, anyways,
all right, we'll leave gambling alone because that's a whole rabbit hole to go down. Again, I'm not saying it's not fun; you can't enjoy it, but do realize the net winnings of a lifetime of gambling are rarely high. All right, what do you got for us, sir?
Well, I wanted to talk about the aluminum airship of the future that has finally flown.
All right, so first you said aluminum, which I'm like, okay, things are made out of them like planes. But typically they have a lot of thrust behind them.
Sure.
You're telling me an airship, so what are you saying?
Yeah, this fully
helium?
rigid airship, and it does say that it is filled with, oh geez, iPad, you're covering up the good parts. Maintains its buoyancy with a series of gas-filled bladders, and they called it a rigid airship. And I immediately went back to Archer.
That's all I can think of. I was like, can we just talk about Archer?
Yeah, that season 1 episode.
It's just, oh, that's great. Yeah,
he keeps yelling at people for smoking on the plane.
Right, he doesn't understand helium versus hydrogen. My favorite line of that episode is when the captain finally says, what do you not understand about this? And he answers, well, obviously the core concept.
And then one person is smoking, but he's like, well, that is a non-smoking area.
Right.
But anyways, this was given to us by Devin Head. I think he's one of your students,
one of my students,
He said the article talks about how the Hindenburg disaster promptly put an end to the dreams of giant balloons drifting airplanes above us, right? And so now instead of and what's a Zeppelin, Nathan?
Zeppelin is a large rigid airship, famous from the German engineering.
So
Hindenburg was a famous example.
I think this is going to be an example where you're going to get a better image from our green screen here versus us just talking about it, because it just looks like a big aluminum airship. So considering the fact that this thing is flown, I guess that's just the weird science where it's like I'm not going to buy a ticket for this thing anytime soon. All right, let's move on to your gun owners being more racist.
Gosh, I know. I'm just bringing like crazy things. Now, last week I talked about marriage and divorce rates linked to religion, so already I'm controversial there. And so now I'm going to bring another one to the table. So the hot issue of gun control, meaning how well should we regulate gun ownership? Very hot issue. I've heard, and Jason being in the debate, I'm sure, has heard great points on both sides. I've heard a lot of stupid points on both sides.
I both support and don't support.
Right. It's very interesting. Now, I like to use the word I'm an empiricist. I like to look at numbers.
Sure.
And when even my wife and I talked about gun ownership, part of it was cultural things. We talked about in our own lives, what do guns mean to us, and should we do it? And I will say to listeners, I'm not a gun owner, so that's ultimately where we came down to. But also, one of the reasons I eventually sort of at least fell away from it is, just look at the statistics. I wanted to see kind of what are the chances of injury. I'm expecting a kid, so and again, I have friends who have kids who have guns, and they do it safely, so don't get me wrong. But, you know, so I'm always trying to figure out the pros and cons of this particular issue, because it is a very interesting issue. But one thing I've never considered, and this was a study done by PLOS one of the bigger psychiatric and behavioral journals out there. So they typically do good stuff. And basically they were trying to find, is there any link between gun ownership and racism? And that might seem like a weird place to jump to, but here's why the researchers got curious. And this is Carrie O'Brien, who did part of the study. The reason they were interested were they found that, first of all, if you split race by, let's do the classic white and black, all right, Caucasian, African American, they find that white people are typically less in favor of gun control. Black people are more in favor. Okay, right? So that's not a good or bad. It just is. So interesting. Let's try to find out why. And so they dug into some of the statistics, and first of all, some interesting things they found. This may or may not surprise listeners that, you know, white versus black individuals are much more likely to be killed by a gun than white people. So already you can kind of see maybe that would be why black Americans would be more sensitive and want more gun control, because they're more likely to have their lives end by gun. But another odd anomaly they found was in homes, white gun owners were more likely, and let me read this to you because I found this kind of interesting. Whites are actually more likely to kill themselves with the guns in their home than be killed by someone else.
Sure.
So again, they were like, so they are not favoring gun control, but yet they seem to be more, you know, at risk. So here are just a bunch of demographics at risk. And so I guess this researcher thought, well, I want to see if this is racially motivated at all. And so what they found was, and basically we have quite a bit of ways of batteries tests we can do to measure racism. Basically we ask a lot of questions, and we sort of have hidden meanings in the questions, and we can start putting things together.
Yeah.
And so they said for 1 point increase in the anti-black racism, sometimes called symbolic racism, I said for every person who had 1 point increase on the scale of possible racism, the odds of them having a gun in their own home jumped 50%. And it said supporting policies that allow for concealed guns rose 28%. So basically what they found was, here is a measure that tests for Caucasian gun owners, how uncomfortable are they with this other race? And the more uncomfortable they were with this race, the less they favored gun control, the more likely they would have guns in their home, and the more likely they want to conceal guns. When I step back and look at the study, I'm not super surprised. I fear this unknown element. I'm less comfortable with people not like me.
Yeah.
Therefore, I want things to protect myself. What do you think of that? Of all the, I threw a lot at you. So,
yeah.
What do you think?
I tend to agree. Like whenever you had, was it Ben Barnes in here, talking about how as a Native American, there's not a lot of Native American superheroes, right? So you really can't empathize with any of the superheroes. And so if you have a preconceived notion that, I don't know, black people are out to get you or something, or they're the ones that are involved in home invasions, maybe that would be a reason why, I don't know, you would get guns or whatnot. The article does say that there needs to be more empirical evidence, right? Yes,
this was an initial, just a little kind of a study on taking a personality profile and then getting their opinions on gun ownership as a baseline. And typically in psych studies or any studies, oftentimes that's how you'll start. You'll do like, okay, will we find anything even with this initial question? They did, and so, okay, now let's go deeper. Let's start to try to find out what's going on
I wonder if this has any connection to our president being black, the fact that Smith & Wesson has had huge record sales by year over the past couple of years. I don't necessarily think it's because Obama's black, because they're saying that Obama's trying to take away our guns, those gun control people, or anti-gun control people, but he hasn't really made a lot of comments about gun control.
It usually rates pretty high for gun owners.
He made comments after the Newtown shooting, but what president wouldn't, you know? So, and so, anyways, I guess I couldn't agree more on that. So.
Yeah, it's interesting to think of. So, and once again, for those of you who were religious, I will say today, if you're gun owners, I'm not saying you are necessarily racist, but I can see their angle that we're more likely to want to protect ourselves the more we fear the unknown, and that can certainly racism is the easiest measure of our uncomfortableness with other people. So, Jason, you've got one more weird science for us. We have a nice little set here. So what you got? Another reader sent us this, right?
Another reader, and I think that it is Devin Head again.
Okay.
No, it may have been Cody Watkins. No, I think it was Devin Head. It was one of those two.
Both submit, so sorry we can't remember. Both of you guys listen and submit. So.
He says Qualcomm's brain-like processor is almost as smart as your dog. So we're talking about Qualcomm's project called Zeroth, which hopes will one day give a radical advantage over other mobile chip companies.
Okay.
They're biologically inspired. Apparently they have some artificial intelligence in the form of a dog robot.
So chip manufacturers thinking they can replicate dog neurology.
Yes, there we go. Yeah. Is that possible, Nathan?
Replicating brains in general has been the goal of engineers, programmers, roboticists for a long time. I mean, we use the word artificial intelligence all the time. If you play video games, people talk about AI. Now, it's not really intelligence yet. We don't know how to make a true neural pathway or anything yet. We're working on that.
They have one quotation here that says, everything here is biologically realistic, spiking neurons implemented in hardware on that actual machine. So there we go.
Trying to create. Did you ever see the movie the movie Blade Runner or the book Do Robots Dream of Electric Sheep? That's that.
No, neither one. But Blade Runner is shown in the basic film course at the University of Arkansas. I just so happen to know. But
yep, it's a classic sci-fi book based on Philip K. Dick. Well, I mentioned that. I'm not going to get into the issue. It's basically they're robots who look like people, and they're discriminated and hunted down because of various reasons. But it made me think of, there was a neat sci-fi thing of like a lot of animals had gone extinct, and so they had robot animals. I mean, they looked exactly the same, but it was like if you had the real animal, you were rich and cool. And if you had a dog, it probably was a robot dog, even though it didn't look like it. But I'm always like in the back of my brain when I hear stories like that, I'm like, are we like closer to that? Like, hey Jimmy, I'm not gonna get you a dog because that could die, but here's your robot dog. It looks like a normal dog, and you think it's a dog, but it's not really. I don't know. Just I think of TV and movies.
Robot dogs.
All right, so that's a bit of weird science for you guys. If you have more, as I said at the beginning, post, and maybe we'll bring it on a podcast. We love it when you do the work for us. So we're going to take a break there. When we come back, we'll have our new feature we alluded to before. We're going to be dissecting the new, let's just say, risk Marvel is taking, and we think it's some pretty cool stuff. So see you then.
Marvel feature.
This episode of Psych Out is brought to you by, surprise, surprise, Crowder College.
Woohoo!
Jason, did you know that Crowder College has over 90 degree and certificate programs?
Shut your mouth.
What'd you talk about, Willis? Apparently we're 80s cliches is what we're doing today.
Yes!
We've got 9 locations, these sort of satellite learning facilities at Webb City, Monet, Cassville, but of course here in Neosho is our primary campus.
That's Monet, by the way.
Oh, is it Monet? What did I say?
Monet.
Sorry, I'm cultured, Monet. I'm so...
That's what I was thinking. Like, he's learning.
I have the same problem when I don't say Miami. Sorry.
Hey, the first time we read this, I said I want to teach a class at Matt County. Guess who's teaching a class at Matt County?
Look at you. I assume it's you. If not, that was a terrible.
Oh yeah, there. Tuesday nights, Matt County speech class.
Look at you. All right. Well, a lot of places here in Missouri, specifically southwestern Missouri, is kind of a region service. And so whether you're looking for a actual career, you're looking for a year degree to move into another degree, we've got you covered here. You can take day classes, night classes. You said you're doing night class, huh? Online classes, twilight classes, evening classes, flex classes, even 8-week courses instead of our typical 16-week courses. So a lot that you can do if you have any sort of busy schedule or a unique living situation. We will try to accommodate you.
Let's go back to that one part where you said we can just do anything. You come to Crowder, you don't have to be here for 2 years. Just get a couple credits, maybe go on to a 4-year school.
That's right.
Or you come here just to get a certificate for something. I'm sure our bosses would want us to say, be here for semester after semester after semester. But you can come here for whatever your heart desires.
Absolutely. Crowder is a great stepping stone for other education purposes, but also if you just want to come back and learn some things after you've got a degree. Maybe you got a job, you got a family, and now you're bored.
I've seen students that have been here for longer than 2 years.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, so if you have any questions, we don't have all the answers, but we do have people who do. You can go to our website, www.crowder.edu, or you can call Crowder anytime at 866-238-7788 to get all the information on what you need to sign up, what you need to enroll, and all of the courses available at your disposal.
Crowder College, home of the Rough Riders.
Rough Riders.
Rough Riders. I don't know if that's even a song. All right.
Made it one.
Yeah. All right. To, like what we did last week, Nathan, we'll go from live read to the feature.
For feature.
And since neither one of us are bald or a scientist, that must mean that Russ Hopper is not with us.
I like to think I'm a little bit of a scientist. But,
oh, yeah. Social scientist, right?
But I'm not bald, and I don't know a fraction of what he knows. So
oh, yeah.
In his presence, I am not a scientist.
So we will have the Russ Hopper interview in about 2 weeks, and so what we're going to talk about today is all things Marvel.
Marvel comics, I say, as I got Batman and Batgirl on my desk.
And that's Marvel. What we should open up the discussion with, Nathan, is what, because I'm not a real comic book guy. I'm like, hey, there's Batman, and there's the Hulk, and there's the Governor from The Walking Dead.
Pop comic guy, yeah, I got you.
So
I'm there too.
What is the difference between DC and Marvel? Understanding that the basic, I guess, audience member probably doesn't know.
The shortest version is basically they're comic book publishers. They're just publishing houses that got their start around the 1930s and 40s. They went through different names. Detective Comics becoming DC eventually. Marvel was called something else. I'm sorry, I can't remember. My comic history is a bit hazy. But eventually adopted the term Marvel Comics. And in the 1940s and 50s, in the heyday of comic books, I mean, there were dozens of close to 100 publishers of comic books. So, I mean, we're talking about a huge influx, like in the same way that there are companies that make movies.
Okay.
After the war, as both interest in certain comic books and superheroes died down, as well as a bunch of political stuff we've talked about in the previous podcast, they were really one of the big publishers left standing because they had some characters that were super popular. With DC, you have Batman and Superman, Wonder Woman. With Marvel, you have Spider-Man, Fantastic Four, and then eventually the X-Men out of the 60s, though originally X-Men were not very popular. Actually, they were rebooted because they just weren't as well as successful, which is funny now thinking about how popular they are.
So Batman and Superman are DC Comics.
DC Comics.
And our Avenger friends like Thor, Iron Man, Hulk, Avengers and X-Men are all Marvel comics, right?
And Marvel got the reputation, and no, I think in today's world both experiment with this. Marvel got the reputation in the 50s and 60s, certainly in the 60s, of being kind of the counterculture characters. I mean, the Incredible Hulk, that's like an anti-hero, or Spider-Man, here's a guy with blue-collar problems, you know, and relationship issues. He's not like, dun-dun-dun, I can do anything.
Yeah.
He's like, I got to feed my, aunt and work a job. And, or Fantastic Four, here's a group of 4 superheroes that really don't like each other.
Okay.
And, they don't get along, they have family problems, and so they kind of got this reputation of being, and this is some people's words, I like both publishers, but they got the reputation of being more, quote, sophisticated at that time because they're dealing with heavy social issues and things like that.
But you can like both, right?
Absolutely.
I love Batman, and I'm a pretty big fan of Iron Man and the Avengers.
And I would argue today that both publishers are producing the same types of stories. You can like characters and arcs and writers, and I'm not in the comic book world either in terms of I'm not reading what's current. Usually someone says, here's a collection of things, check it out. But certainly DC and Marvel have taken very different roads in entertainment.
Okay.
If you looked in the world of movies, for most of movie history, superhero movies weren't that big, but when they were, it was DC. You had Superman in the 70s. You had Batman in the 80s. And that was about it. Sam Raimi's Spider-Man and Bryan Singer's first X-Men were the first big Marvel properties to really take off and become international hits for the Marvel universe. And I mean, today they have certainly and what we're really talking about today, because we're going to talk about Thor and talk about some other things, is Marvel did something unprecedented that certainly DC hasn't done yet. And I understand why, because what a gamble. They decided we're going to plan a whole bunch of movies that all lead towards another movie, hoping that they sell. And they started with a movie called Iron Man, which I know is super popular now. He was not in the scheme of pop culture, a very popular character.
Like he came out of nowhere.
And Robert Downey Jr. had been off the radar for his substance abuse issues for a decade or more, so he wasn't in the pop culture zeitgeist. You know, he did a couple of indie things before he did Iron Man, and yet that gambles rolled the dice, super successful.
Yeah.
And then they made another movie, and then another, and it turns out we're all leading towards this thing called the Avengers, and so, oh my God, now it's billions of dollars internationally.
And
DC, I mean, you know, they had their Batman trilogy with Nolan, which was great, but they have nothing laid down.
They don't have a universe.
Yeah, they did not have their universe. Now, it sounds like they're going to try with the whole Man of Steel, but we're not here to talk about that today. We're here to talk about Marvel. So, you know, kudos for Marvel to first take that big plunge, and here's our gamble.
And some other not so big successes for Marvel were the Hulk movies, right?
Yeah, especially the original Hulk way back when Ian Lee did not do well. So yeah, they just were not making money at the movies.
And I think what's getting everybody's attention, Nathan, and you alluded to it, was like these big movies that are going in phases. They also have things where they're referencing other movies in the middle of it, as well as they're also showing little teasers during the credits and even at the end credits, right? So at the end of the first Iron Man, we see this hammer that's in the middle of the desert, and that must be Thor, right? Then we get to the Thor movie, and then they have their own teaser and things like that.
Absolutely.
And so what I was going to ask you about, Nathan, were some kind of like the future movies, or there's so many areas we can go. Where should we start?
Let's start first with, since we know about their big movies that are happening, let's just really quickly, you saw Thor 2, which is part of their new section. So Iron Man 3 was the beginning of what they call Phase 2. Like, okay, here's our new set of movies that are going to lead towards a big thing. Okay. The Avengers 2. We got a new Iron Man movie. We got a new Thor movie, which we won't go into detail because I haven't seen it. I don't want any spoilers. But Jason, overall, what did you think about it?
I thought it was a really good movie. I'm like you, where it's sometimes hard for me to suspend disbelief on a demigod, right? I'm not saying
Thor was a tough sell for me.
He's an alien that flies, and whatever. Like, that's the reason why I like Batman. That's someone like me. Yeah, he has no superpowers, but Thor, like, he can harness lightning, and he could just beat the crap out of you with his hammer. My big takeaway was that the character Loki, not only is Loki doing a good job, but just the guy that's playing him, Tom Hiddleston, doing a superb job. Almost takes the spotlight away from Thor, kind of like the Joker took it away from Batman and Dark Knight.
Absolutely.
The final scene was fantastic. I think I told you that.
Said it was good, but no spoilers.
I can't tell you, like,
No, nothing. Nothing.
Okay, this the big thing. Okay, fine. It takes place in numerous. Okay, can I at least ask you? It sounds like they're preparing for this thing called Guardians of the Galaxy.
Yes, that's the next film.
Tell us what Guardians of the Galaxy is.
Guardians of the Galaxy, again, not being the super comic guy, I'm just telling you what I've had to kind of research and find out. Like the Avengers, it's a pre-existing group of superheroes, but it's in space. You know, like Green Lantern, that's a DC thing. They're kind of like superheroes in space doing space things. Yeah. Guardians of the Galaxy, same idea. Here's some guys, aliens, working together, keeping the galaxy safe and Earth safe. So now, from what I understand of the property, it's a little bit like Iron Man, a little more sense of humor, smart. You know what I mean? Like, there's not tongue in cheek, but you know, like a little more like kind of gray hero. You know, a little dirtier, a little smarmier, Han Solo roguelike, if you will. So they're a little more not tongue in cheek, but sort of that idea. They are a space superhero team. We haven't seen anything of them in any of the films yet, so that's why I don't know much about them, because I don't read them. Who's
their bad guy, do you know? Is it Thanos?
Thanos could be one of the guys. I think Thanos is set up to be this one, because he's a space alien bad dude that you saw teased at the end of Avengers.
Yes, and that's another thing. Like, you know how we have like movies, and then we have movies upon movies and things like that, so Avengers is kind of like a huddled up version of Thor, Captain America, and Iron Man. So are they also having a multitude of bad guys, or does Thor have his bad guy? Does Captain America have his bad guy? Or
it seems like in the Marvel films that are leading up to Avengers, they typically only tackle one dude, maybe a sub dude, but it seems to be one dude pretty proper.
Well, have you heard of the Collector? Have you heard of that guy?
That name sounds familiar.
Well, I don't. Like I said, I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a bad guy now. It looks, and it was only in the teaser, that looks to be collecting. Like, for starters, he's got the Tesseract now.
Yeah,
and then he's looking for a couple other things. So I think that they might be having like this collector guy be the final villain in Avengers 3. But like you said, if they have like 8 or 9 movies building up to a final movie, wow, that bad guy is going to be really bad.
Yes. You're setting that stage. So that's what Marvel's doing with the films. Now, as we did not know at the time when we were recording last week's podcast, we're talking about the way Netflix is changing television entertainment. Sure. Now, we've mentioned several times that Marvel first experimented with TV. They have a brand new show that's, not that they first experimented, but in terms of being part of their movie universe, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., which is a show going on right now that is about secret agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. dealing with superhero stuff. They occasionally intersect with movie things. And in fact, supposedly an episode's coming up that has all to do with the big Thor thing you're mentioning, but I won't let you tell me.
Sure.
With that said, that's on ABC. That's a TV show that you would watch like any other TV show. The day after we recorded, I think even that night after we recorded Psych Out about how Netflix is changing TV, Marvel made a 4 TV show deal with Netflix, guaranteed 13 episodes apiece, each of a different superhero.
Jeez.
So the equivalent of 4 seasons, already written, 1 a year, and then all 4 will have a team-up miniseries like the Avengers in their universe. And the characters are doing, first of all, Daredevil, which is one some people are familiar with. It had a pretty decent movie, not that well liked. It's okay. Ben Affleck was in it. But Daredevil, The Man Without Fear. You've got Jessica Jones, who is sort of a private detective, but I think she ultimately has superpowers. I don't know a lot about her. She also has a relationship with a pretty famous Marvel character called Luke Cage, and one of the reasons he's famous is that he's not white. I mean, and I don't mean that his character, I just mean there's not a lot of diverse heroes coming out of the 40s and 50s until we got to the 60s. He's a real well-known, well-liked Marvel character. And then we have Iron Fist, who is a martial artist character. And I know enough that Luke Cage and Iron Fist do stuff together in the comics. That's kind of a thing. And Jessica Jones and I think Luke Cage dated for a while. So they're all kind of interconnected. And they're all in New York. They're all New York-based things. You know, like Daredevil's in Hell's Kitchen. And so here they are saying, guaranteed 13 episodes a season, 4 series.
So many.
Going to a thing. I mean, that's astounding. I mean, Netflix has already done 1 or 2 one-season commitments to something. Like Orange is the New Black, they did first. And now they're doing another one, I believe. But, you know, they took their gamble, and now they're going to make another. To say, we guarantee we will make these 4 shows, and we will make 13 episodes apiece, commercial-free, Netflix only.
Yeah.
And they all link into the Marvel Universe. That's huge.
You already sold me.
Yeah, I mean, that's crazy. Crazy. And, well, I won't talk anymore. What do you say about that? Because that just blows my mind. I mean, it makes sense now that they've said it. Like, oh, yeah, why wouldn't you do that?
Well, it's essentially
it's
essentially like the Avengers huddle up, but they're doing it all on Netflix. I mean, if Netflix has the money to do that, and I'm assuming they do, you're going to need a Hulk-like person to even lift up all that money they're going to make.
Go back to the DC Marvel thing, and again, yes, we like them both. We like this stuff. I really like this Arrow show, which is Green Arrow. I like Smallville, but I like Arrow a lot. The 2nd season, I've loved it. I'm like, man, this is a great superhero show. And then I just get mad that DC didn't do this. Yeah. Like, why didn't they, when Marvel was doing that, why didn't DC say, man, let's get on Netflix? Man, that's a thing.
And we've been talking about 10 or 11 movies that are all intersplicing together. Yeah. And the only thing that DC has done up to this point is teased the idea that Superman and Batman are going to be
it hasn't happened yet. Yeah. So that's their attempt to start what Marvel is doing. And again, that's not to disparage DC films. Like, the Batman trilogy was amazing. And I don't need it to link to anything.
Sure.
But I was surprised when Marvel made this announcement. I was like, oh my God, like, why didn't DC do this?
And we were talking about how Thor...
Maybe they will. Maybe they will. I don't know.
It's hard for us to suspend disbelief, but Avengers was somewhat believable because, well, sure, maybe it's not believable here on Earth, but you almost take the Marvel universe literally, where it's like, maybe we don't have to fight all these battles on Earth. And in fact, Nathan, I was going to tell you to wrap up my Thor discussion, is I think the 3rd installment of Thor is going to be him protecting Earth. It's just the way that Thor 2 ended up.
Right.
I think there's a particular
all these
person.
places are connected in Thor.
Yeah,
Galaxies,
and I think the Avengers are actually going to venture outside of Earth, right?
Yeah.
They're going to go fight
I can
other,
see that.
like Thanos is going to be,
Sure.
he's going to be in outer Earth and stuff. So again, Batman deals with the Joker on Times Square, but who's to say that Superman is also trying to be somebody like in outer space, right?
Yeah.
Anything else on that Marvel?
I just thought it was cool. I think, though, I'm going to say one more thing because it's going to lead me to the last thing you wanted to bring up, which I also thought was cool news about the new comic book character. When I was reading the news about, hey, this new 4 Marvel TV series, someone made this comment, and I was like, hey, think about that. Because you mentioned Ben Barnes and the Native American superhero.
Yeah.
That was a great thing.
What's up, Ben Barnes?
Ben Barnes, can you shout out? When I mentioned the 4 characters that are getting TV shows in Marvel, let's describe them. Daredevil, disabled person. Jones, female. Luke Cage, black. Iron Fist, Asian.
Cool. Yeah.
Like, diverse non-white superheroes.
No healthy
like
white people.
It's been a while. And again, this is not to disparage my own race, but realize, comics have been written since the 30s.
Hey,
they're predominantly white.
The Hulk is green.
They are green. Are green.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of a neat, not only are we getting these extra comic book shows, which I like nerdy stuff like that, but some diverse characters that boys and girls and men and women of not white males could say, hey, I'm into that.
That reminded me of your favorite discussion right now, Elementary, and how Watson isn't perceived as a female or Asian. This last episode kind of touched on her femalality a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit, yeah.
Did you saw the last episode? Her and Mycroft?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
But even that was just a normal character thing. It was like, she sure is a woman. I absolutely thought it was great.
Well, what I wanted to talk about was this idea that Marvel introduces a Muslim superhero in Ms. Marvel #1.
Yes.
Now, are you familiar with Ms. Marvel?
A little bit. Captain Marvel in the Marvel universe is kind of a Superman-esque, powerful guy, and then like with many comic characters, then you get a female version. So there was, Miss Marvel. I think there's another person with Marvel. I don't know the Marvels, but they're superpower people, usually a spacey kind of a thing. But anyway, go with So I think whoever is Miss Marvel right now in the comic books is going to get a new name, and so they opened the door for
Ms. Marvel, superhero of the Islamic faith, first ever Muslim title character for Marvel Comics, and pretty much the first Muslim superhero from the mainstream. Comic books. So essentially, that's just it.
She's a teenage girl.
Kamala Khan, 16-year-old from Jersey City. And she's a Muslim girl during the day, and by night, Ms. Marvel.
Yeah.
And it looks like she has a big fist.
Yeah, I think she can change her body or something. I don't know.
Oh, yeah, she's a shapeshifter.
Shapeshift.
Cool.
Yeah. I saw that. In fact, our guest next week, Keith Zaromsky, we emailed each other because he sent that to me asking did I see it, because we talk about pop culture and historical context too, and I thought that was really cool. And actually, about a week before, and this is again not to compare comic books, but DC had announced they're doing a character based off a real life native girl in Quebec. She was an activist, and so they're going to have their first mainstream native character, who again I don't think is native. Like Miss Marvel isn't Muslim hero. She just happens to be Muslim.
She happens to be Muslim.
Who becomes Miss Marvel. And so I think that's important too, because it's not, look, I am the token Indian character and my powers are Indian powers. It's neat that you can be like, hey, I'm this guy. And in fact, Marvel, there's 2 Spider-Mans. There's currently Ultimate Spider-Man and the Peter Parker Spider-Man. Ultimate Spider-Man is I want to say he's biracial. I think maybe he's a Muslim. He's a teenage kid as well. So, just the idea, if not, I want to say Muslim, but it might be confusing characters. But the idea that we're kind of figuring out, hey, we can make heroes look different, and guess what? They still sell. In fact, Thor, the big gatekeeper,
Idris Elba?
Yeah. That character wasn't originally black, but hey, it's cool. Like
it works, and it doesn't.
He was an awesome actor, so
I don't think racism is a big thing in Asgard.
Yeah. So it's kind of neat. That makes me excited because certainly I have a kid on the way, and so I'm certainly on the prowl for pop culture that a girl would be into. And it's nice to say, like, here's a girl superhero, and not like the little girl version of a superhero, but a female superhero, like standing on their own. Here's their thing.
Well, she could always be Alex Mack. You remember that from Nickelodeon? Superhero, like 13.
World of Alex.
Yeah, remember that? Love
Do you
that
remember
show.
Clarissa X Wins at all?
Heck yeah.
Okay, I was just seeing how far back your Nickelodeon knowledge. Nothing to do with Marvel at all. All right, you have anything else to say? We talked a lot about Marvel. So much cool stuff.
That was a Marvel discussion.
Yeah, we need to get some like swag for Marvel for promoting their stuff
Yeah,
there.
and Netflix, for God's sake.
That's right. It's 2 in a row. We need to hashtag Netflix in
Netflix.
our discussion.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for listening to our feature, guys. Again, whatever property you're into, DC, Marvel, there's other stuff. There's Image, Top Cow, it's cool stuff. It's the new mythology, a lot of neat stories coming out of that. And I'm super excited, like Jason, because we're getting cool movies, we're getting awesome TV shows, so that you don't have to follow the. I mean, there's cool stories, but I don't read them every month. I don't pay lots of money. I don't do all the stuff. So it's nice to like that stuff and get it in another way. And there's cool TV shows. So we're gonna take a break there. When we come back, we'll have a quick wrap up for you and talk a bit about what's to come next week in our Thanksgiving special.
Ooh-ah.
You said I could cry, fall upon my knees, find a way to lie about the hope I never see. Some sun, living late, even heroes have to watch a feet with my sir. But when you come see it, even heroes have to watch a dream and try to be.
I wanted to throw a shout out to a man named Trey Thibodeau.
It's a friend of mine from Louisiana.
Yeah, that has to be a Louisiana last name.
Yeah, we have a lot of
Doe
those.
is spelled with an X.
Yeah.
So anyways, he says he's on episode 17, Podcast of Steel.
You're slowly getting there,
I
Trey.
know I am late to the party, but love the podcast, you guys. BTW, my superpower would be to know the correct answer to any question. Could be dangerous. Knowledge is power.
That's a pretty good power. I thought about.
The power to move you. It's been so long since I got to say that.
I know.
So who's Trey Thibodeau, Nathan?
He is a friend of mine, married to Emery Thibodeau, who's also commented on our stuff before.
Yeah.
Friends of my sister. I met them through my sister.
That's a fun name, Thibodeau.
Thibodeau!
Yeah. And that's another thing, Nathan. You know, you don't have to just jump in at episode 39. Go back to episode 4 and start there and go up.
Yeah.
Not 1, 2, or 3. We were...
I don't know what we're doing.
No, actually, they all pretty much hold up. And you can also see the progression where you get to episode 30 and all of a sudden, whoosh, we have bodies. And
Yeah. No, in fact, our Walking Dead podcast, which was the early one, is still one of my favorites, but it has like terrible audio because we just didn't know what we were doing
I'm like
at the time.
shouting at the
Yeah,
audience.
so it happens. We're still figuring that stuff out and working with our equipment. So,
All right.
Anything else you want to wrap things up?
Well, I wanted to show you this comic that Cody Watkins posted on our...
Is it the Freud one?
No, it's this
Okay.
one. It says, "What's your favorite psychology study, Batman?" And then Batman slaps Robin and says, "The Bobo doll
I'll put that up here.
experiment."
That's funny. Yeah. Bobo the Clown. That's a good one.
Well, tell us about the Bobo doll.
Bobo doll was a guy named Bandura who filmed adults playing with this. You ever seen those like inflatable clown things that you hit them when they come?
Oh yeah, they're filled with sand on the bottom.
Yeah. It could be sand or air or water or whatever.
I think Flintstones had a
Flintstones, Weebles, I think they were called at one time.
Well, Nathan, Weebles wobble, but they don't fall.
They do. So it's a toy that you're supposed to knock down. But he filmed adults playing with the toy, and then he would show kids the video. And basically, what he showed in that experiment was just them just watching a video and then letting them play whatever they wanted to. They would mimic exactly how the adult played. So the adult picked up the toy and threw it against the wall. They would pick up Bobo and throw it against the wall. If the parent found a toy hammer and hit the ball, they would find the toy hammer and hit the clown in the face that way. So kind of copying what they see. He was studying the big picture, observational learning. You know, the joke is, what's your favorite term? I'm slapping you in the face and saying Bobo the clown, because that's what you do. You slap my in the face there.
Hey, just a real quick psychology lesson in 5 seconds. What do you feel about monkey see, monkey do? Is that a psychology?
That's what he's talking about.
Okay.
You call it observational learning. Yeah.
And then just real quickly, just like a 5-second weird science, I know Nathan posted on our wall, a UK company has developed an ice cream containing jellyfish proteins. It glows when you lick it.
Amazing.
Yeah, because it's ice cream.
Ice cream that glows. I mean, I can't think in the course of human history. Maybe penicillin, maybe, and then glowing ice cream. 2 best inventions I've ever heard of in my life. Right there.
Yeah. I don't have anything else. I have hotel information on here, but I don't think anybody wants to know about that.
Sounds creepy.
I'm also the debate coach. I don't have just a podcast.
If you're a listener and would like to meet me at this hotel.
Well, yeah, that is the Baymont Inn and Suites in Lawton, Oklahoma.
Yeah.
Anyways, this weekend we are going to Tulsa Community College.
You guys are still trekking and competing,
Yeah,
huh?
and then in 2 weeks we have to host a high school tournament, so I'm about ready to do another bookend couple weekends.
Man, just listening to your schedule.
Yeah, Tulsa is hosted by a woman named Donna Goodwin.
Hello, Donna.
She was a debate coach back even when I was a youngling, learning how to debate using the force. But they're hosting a tournament now, and it looks like Crowder has one of the bigger entries, so we're going to go, and we're going to try to dominate.
You will.
And bring home the trophies. What are you doing this weekend?
It's like nothing. I mean, listening to your plans, apparently wasting my life away.
Sleepy.
I am not facilitating any academic or social progression.
It's getting to that time of year. Those of you that don't live here, but when we started as cold weather and we've been going so long, it's starting to be cold weather again.
Yeah.
You know, waking up in the morning and there's like frost on your windshield. Ugh, what a pain.
If only.
So I was saying, like, you know, if you're not doing anything on the weekend, that's good, right? Just get to be home in the heated house.
I'm not complaining. I like it. Well, that's it for closing. Let's just real quick remind listeners that we have an awesome interview coming next week with Mr. Keith. Say his last name.
Zaromsky.
Well done. Well done, sir. Tried to trick him up. I couldn't do it.
It'll be our Thanksgiving special about a week ahead of schedule, but that's okay. So
yeah, we have a super short week, actual Thanksgiving week here at Crowder, so we thought it best to record and prepare an awesome feature for you guys.
Yeah, the podcast is going to take a small break, but you'll still have your episode a week.
You will.
So,
we don't miss.
Dedicated fans.
All right, well, we'll stop there for the day. Jason and I are certainly tired of talking. You're probably tired of listening, but do come back next week. And until then, Jason, words of closing?
Angry Bird.
Why do I pitch it to you?
When the cavalry comes, we're looking for a reason to break down these walls and jump. When the cavalry comes, we're looking for a reason to show you the brave don't run. No, they don't run.
Tatum Bell Tower.
Now you're just naming things that you can see out the window.
I love Lamp.